Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Joe Biden's disastrous student loan forgiveness policy. To be completely honest with you guys, I thought I'd record maybe one or two videos and basically that'd be it. I didn't think there was so much depth and so many things to talk about. But of course, as I'm learning there is, I've made like 4 or 5 videos on the topic already, all covering completely different concepts related to this bill, or it's not even really a bill, it's more of just an executive order or mandate. And that right there is exactly what I want to talk about. The question that I've been asking myself basically since Joe Biden announced his new plan to cancel $10,000 in student loan debt and $20,000 for people with Pell Grants is, does Joe Biden actually have the authority to do this? Is it just me, or is this totally unconstitutional? From my understanding, he's able to put a pause on the payments, which is something that's been going on forever, and he continues to extend it completely irresponsibly. However, that I know is within the scope of his authority. He can in fact continue a moratorium on student loan payments. But can the president just cancel debt? Well, my conclusion is, I don't think so. And I think the White House's legal argument here, they're using a specific act, is completely bogus. I don't think Joe Biden can legally cancel any debt. And I think this entire thing is going to backfire in his face spectacularly, as we are very likely to see Joe Biden challenged in court. And if you ask me, it's very likely that his actions get deemed unconstitutional and he gets blocked. Let's talk about this, folks. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, friends, so the question is, does Joe Biden actually have the authority? We've got this piece right over here from Reason.com. Will Joe Biden's student loan debt cancellation plan hold up in court? The president claims broad authority to act under a post-9/11 law. President Joe Biden has announced a plan to use executive authority to cancel up to $10,000 in student loan debt for every borrower who earns less than $125,000 a year, while canceling up to $20,000 for every borrower who took out a Pell Grant and earns less than $125K a year. Typically, an action of this sort would be performed by Congress, not the president, since it is Congress that is exclusively vested with the federal spending power under the US Constitution. See Article 1, Section 8. So based on the Constitution itself, only Congress has this type of authority when it comes to borrowing. So the question is, as they continue, where does Joe Biden purport to get the authority to do this, and will his legal justification hold up in court? The Biden administration says that it has the authority to unilaterally cancel student loan debt under the terms of the Higher Education Relief Opportunities for Students Act, otherwise known as the HEROES Act of 2003. According to President George W. Bush, who signed the act into law, it permits the Secretary of Education to waive or modify federal student financial assistance program requirements to help students in their family or academic institutions affected by a war, other military operation, or national emergency. Basically, the HEROES Act was designed to let the executive branch ameliorate the student loan situation of service members fighting the war on terror. And the argument that Joe Biden is using is just that last part right over there, or national emergency, and he's claiming, or his argument, his absolutely shoddy garbage argument, is that the quote national emergency that justifies his cancellation of student loans is of course the COVID pandemic. Does that seem like an argument that's going to hold up in court? Absolutely not. The HEROES Act was meant to benefit heroes, veterans, not gender studies majors, not elitist liberals who live in big cities where the rent's way too high and have useless degrees and obviously are completely underwater financially because they're living a life or a lifestyle that they can't afford. I don't think Joe Biden has the authority here, folks. And even back in April, apparently Nancy Pelosi even agreed.
People think that the President of the United States, is this more on the subject and you ever want to know? Will you let me know? People think that the President of the United States has the power for debt forgiveness. He does not. He can postpone, he can delay, but he does not have that power. That has to be an act of Congress.
But of course, what has changed, folks? What's changed is the midterm elections are right around the corner, and Democrats just so desperately need a win. And so I'm honestly at this point willing to wager that I don't even think Democrats intend to move forward with this executive action. I'm pretty sure this is a stunt to buy votes, and in the end, once it hits the courts and is possibly deemed unconstitutional, Joe Biden gets to throw his hands up in the air and say, well, I tried. All you vote blue no matter who people wanted from me is for me to actually try and do something and flex my executive power. I did, and well, it didn't work. You can't blame me because at least I tried. And Democrats know this. I mean, it's garbage policy. But but oh, it is great campaigning. Unrealistic Fantasyland la 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 policy is great in campaign season. You promise, you promise, you promise the biggest things ever, and then you underdeliver. I mean, that's basically the way it goes. Or you promise, you promise, you promise, and then things don't exactly turn out as you promised. One of those is bound to happen here, and that second part is exactly what I mean by it's bad policy, because the Democrats are promising that this is a great piece of legislation that's only going to help people who need it. But the reality is, as even Democrat advisors are now admitting, this proposal is not going to do what Democrats are saying it is. Take a look at this take from former top Clinton advisor Paul Begala.
Democrats, I'm a progressive. I want to help folks, but I think this is terrible policy. Politics, we saw. Tim Ryan is in a tough race in a tough state, and he can't stand this idea. Senator Warren is all for it. She's not exactly from a swing state in Massachusetts. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto from Nevada got a tough race. She doesn't like this. Michael Bennet, the senator from Colorado, he doesn't like this. Democrats, good Democrats. Sharice Davids, one of the more impressive Democrats, the only Democrat in Congress from Kansas, she doesn't like it. So what is my party doing with this? They're disadvantaging. I think they're not helping the people that we're here to help, which is poor people and underprivileged communities. And they're not helping their politicians who are running.
Even Democrats can admit that it's not going to help people that actually need help, because surprise, surprise, most people below the poverty line and most people who are seriously struggling financially don't have fancy, expensive university degrees. Oh, well, you don't say. Like I mentioned earlier, folks, this policy helps overeducated elitist liberals living in extremely expensive metropolitan areas, and it does absolutely nothing for people living under the poverty line. I mean, for Pete's sake, it's targeting people making less than $125,000 a year. If you're making anywhere close to $100,000 a year, in most places that's a great salary. You're able to buy a home, provide for your family, and probably even pay your debts off as well, as long as you're being responsible with your financial decisions. The only people who are suffering making that kind of money or close to that kind of money are people living in New York and California and other extremely expensive metropolitan areas. Those are the people that you're bailing out, not people living in underserved, underprivileged communities. Many of the people that are struggling in those communities are uneducated, don't have university degrees. You're helping posh, suburban-raised city dwellers in their 20s who are among the most privileged class. History speaks for itself, folks. They promised you stimulus and government support. Interest rates went down to 0%. The money printer was turned on. They gave you stimulus, and they funded all of the banks to hand out trillions upon trillions of dollars. It was all a call to action to save the American lower and middle class. People voted for Joe Biden because he promised stimulus. That was a really big part, as well as, of course, student loan forgiveness. And in the end, what do these policies do? They set you further and further and further back. I mean, think about your purchasing power. Think about how far behind you are. Let's say you had $40,000 in debt, in student loan debt. I guess we'll say you're $50,000 behind. Even though you're paying that at a slow pace over time, let's just say you're $50,000 behind. Well, after all the fiscal insanity over the last 2 years, median home prices are up $100,000 over 2020. And that's just the median price. Much worse if you live in states that had much bigger gains. In other words, you're probably still behind on your $50,000 student loan. Maybe Joe Biden's going to turn it to $40,000 if his policy moves forward and if you qualify. And now on your path to purchasing a home, you're $100,000 behind, plus the 40, you're back 140 grand. And then of course everything else is more expensive. They pretend as if they're helping you, but they just continue to set you further and further behind. This is what government stimulus does. It makes everything more and more expensive, and your taxes continue to rise and rise and rise. Even CNBC is reporting that Biden's student debt forgiveness plan may cost taxpayers an average of $2,000. Some policy experts say the government continues to promise that it's here to help, but of course, as we know, especially Democrats, they don't want to help you. They want to continue to make you poorer and more dependent so they can continue to get elected. And all the meanwhile, they're enriching themselves as you continue to get crushed. Here's a great example: how Raphael Warnock doubled his income since joining the Senate. Warnock made over $500,000 in 2021 from book deals, outside employers, and speaking fees. Raphael Warnock literally ran on government stimulus. He ran on $2,000 stimmy checks. He is the Senate tiebreaker. And of course, it's led to a real wage decrease in respect to inflation. The average person is getting poorer, and he is getting richer. You're getting scammed, folks. This entire thing is a scam. And really, it boils down to one concept and one concept alone.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
The only person who can help you is yourself. It's you, not Joe Biden, not Nancy Pelosi, not Chuck Schumer, not Raphael Warnock, not Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The role of government should be the pursuit of less government, smaller government, more efficient government, and allowing people to run their own lives. It's no surprise that back in the 1950s and 60s, you could work at a gas station, buy a home, send your kids to school, put food on the table, and go on vacation. And nowadays, you earn $75,000, $80,000 a year and you're living paycheck to paycheck, of course, depending on where you're living and how many children you have. But the question is, what has changed since then? More bloated bureaucracy, bloated government, and of course, dreaded globalism. Wake up, folks. The whole thing's a scam. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel if you're up for it. I'm gonna get back to work though. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one.